because it's complementary. You know, it's complementary. It's the fact it's a wood sign, and I like that natural effect coming out, depending upon the species of the wood. Okay, so hello, this is Henry with Woodworking by LPI. How you doing today? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 2 of making a wood sign A to Z. In part 1, if you missed it, I'll put the link down in the description, or I'll put it up here in the card somewhere, so you can see part 1 and get the full picture of making a wood sign A to Z. Okay, and this is being part 2. So welcome back. If you get a chance, you might take a look at our YouTube channel homepage and look at the other videos that we have to offer with regard to woodworking, and tips and tricks, as well as particularly geared to wood signs. So, what are we doing today? We're going to do part 2. On part 1, we made it to the point of painting. So what we did was we selected the lumber, put our sand sealer on, and then made sure that everything was good to go. We carved it, and then we prepped it with our coved edge. You can see the coved edge right there. Hopefully, I see if you can do that, or I'm not sure, but anyway, there's a coved edge on this, and you'll see a little more clear here in a minute. And then after that, we made sure all the lettering was cleared out, and used our file and our brush and everything on that. And then we put paint on it, and we used the primer paint. Yes, I put my cans upside down. Of course I haven't, because I try and keep it mixed a little better. So we're to the point now where it's painted. The paint has dried, and today in part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to sand this, stain it, and spar it, and we're going to use these products over here. So first I'm going to sand it, and then I'm going to use my orbital sander here to sand it, and then we're going to stain it, and I'm going to use Minwax. And I'm not affiliated with Minwax. I'm not sponsored or anything with Minwax, but this is a very good stain. This is the one that we use primarily, which is early American. It's primarily the one, well, for the most part, I use 100% of the time. And this spreads very well. I'll show you how I put it on using the foam brushes that I've mentioned in the last video. As well, I'll show you, how I clear out the lettering. That seems to be a question. If you put too much stain on and you have the lettering, how do you get the stain out of the lettering? Okay, I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to put that on, and then when we get to the sealing part, where we're going to put the polyurethane on, that's where I'm going to use this Minwax product. Okay, and I use what they call a spar. Okay, it's the Helmsman specifically. I do use a clear gloss level on this, and the reason, or the difference between this poly and other polys is the Helmsman spar has a little bit of a red tint to it. Okay, and what that does is it provides a nice kind of a reddish glow to it. It's not heavy red tint, but it's subtle. It's enough to notice it. Okay, so we're going to be putting that on, and that'll be our last step in making the wood sign. Okay, and as you can see here, here's the mason jar that I use for the spar. So it has kind of a red tint to it, if you can kind of see that. So, all right, so let's get to sanding the sign. When I sand, I'm going to use my hearing protection. I'm going to use my nitro gloves. I'm going to use my mask, my safety glasses. Wow, that's a lot of safety equipment. And of course, I'm going to hold it down with my my grip here to make sure that everything works out okay. All right, we only sand sealed one side because this is the only side we painted. We didn't have a back message on this, so I didn't seal the back side. And as you can see, it's minimal amount of contamination from the Lazy Susan when I painted it in part 1. So not a whole lot. I will leave the sides black. The lettering will be black when it's done. And how I'm going to sand this. Now, there's a lot of opinions as to how you sand. Obviously, you're going to use, the full, and I have a video on how to sand, and I'll put that down in the description as well. But the pattern, okay? I typically go around the edges first, and then I come across it for the first wave, and then I start clearing it out for the final clearing. Okay, and when I sand this. That's the way I do it. It makes it easier when I go to do the center part, especially when I get over these letters, because sometimes this sander can, if you have it angled at certain points, you can dig down these letters. And believe it or not, that sandpaper once in a while, on occasion, will grip one of these letters and rip out pieces of wood, especially if you're using really soft pine. So you're going to see me doing that. Basically what I'll do is I'll start off and I'll show you the pattern that I'm going to do. And then once I get it to a point where I'm going to finish it off, I'll probably just speed it up, or I'll move on in the video. So you don't have to sit here and watch me completely sand this thing, because I'm sure that wouldn't be too exciting. So let me get my stuff on, my equipment on, and I'll get it gripped down, and then we'll get to sand it. Okay, so we'll go there. So I put the grip on here, and I do that to hold this down. Some people use a mat underneath of this to keep it from moving. I've tried that. It does work. I like the grip better. I hold it in the bottom right hand corner, so I go ahead and go completely across the sign. But that little grip mat, it doesn't hold it as well as I'd like, and it also contains contaminants when I flip it over. If I have a back message on this and I have to flip it over, I don't want the workbench, just has a whole bunch of paint and stuff on it. I don't want it contaminating what I've already sanded. So what I'll do is I'll take one of my shop towels here, and then I'll lay it across it like so, and then I'll flip it over, hold it down with the grip, and then I'll do the back. So tip there, that's what works for me. It's something that I kind of threw together, and I have a lot of self-innovations that I'm sure you do as well inside your shop, or if your hobby, or however you're doing that. So it's common sense, whatever works. There's no particular way to do that. So let's get to sanding. Okay, so as you can see, as I was sanding, I go around the outside edge of the board itself, and then I take off this first layer of primer. Be a little patient, because you're not only taking off the paint, but you're also taking off the sand sealer. And I'm going to show you here as soon as I clear this out, but I'm going to show you the importance of the sand sealer. Okay. So as you can see, the lettering is clear all the way around, and that's what you want. You want the sand sealer to be on there when you carve the lettering, and then after you carve, you apply your paint, and then that'll fill in all the lettering. And that sand sealer is what protects all these edges here, so you don't have that bleeding. There's lines all over the place. The questions on the sanding sealer, you want a light coat. I mean, if you go back to part 1, you can look at how I applied it, and you can see that, excuse me, you can see how it protects what you want to be colored and what, and it doesn't create all these little like fragments, and it's called bleeding. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. So that's the finished product on that. So you can see we have a couple of the knots in here that are collecting up that. That'll complement, believe it or not, with the stain, and I'll show it to you again after the fact. But you know, we have the whole basic design. We haven't got any bleeding going on here. Now I'm going to go ahead and take care of the back here and get that sanded, and you can see that the edge is already done. So kind of shows you the finished product. That's where we're at. All right. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and do the back of this, and then we'll get to staining. Okay, so we got the sign completely sanded on both sides, and I'm going to prop it up here. Okay, so this is the staining station that you see on my workbench, and what I have here is I have my stains here off to the right, and I have a raised platform with a cover of a shop rag sitting there, and I have the stain open, and I have my 3-inch foam brush. This is the same one I used for the sanding sealer when I applied it to the board in the sanding sealer. Now, this isn't really fancy, but I seem to see a lot of questions regarding staining. Okay, so I don't leave the stain on very long. Okay, typically what I do is I put a fresh cover on, make sure I have a good coverage. I go with the grain, and then after I get both sides done, I take it back over to the other station, and then I wipe off the excess, and then I'll show you how I clear out the letters. Okay, so let's get staining. As I go along here, so once you see, this is a fresh brush. Okay, I'm going to set it down inside there, let it soak it up just a little bit, and you know, you can go with the even strokes, or you can go, you know, with a whole bunch of different techniques with regard to staining, or you know, you can use this pre-stain wood conditioner, which is another Minwex product, and again, I'm not affiliated with Minwex, but you know, I use those on three-dimensional signs, and the reason I do that is because I don't want the stain looking really weird on the grain in the background behind the out carved letters, so outset letters as they're called. Okay, so back to staining. So I'm going to take this here, like I said, I'm going to soak that up just a little bit. I'm going to take off the excess on the bottom, and I'm just going to go with the grain. Okay, I'm just going to make this nice and smooth. I'm not throwing a whole lot of excess on. Okay, and as you can see, I'm trying my darndest to not leave a glob up here because it'll leave a line. This does take a little practice to kind of let you know. But you know, once you got it, it's really not hard to do. And then I go the whole length, make sure I get complete coverage, and it's a nice even coverage and such. Okay, and I'll go flip it over here and then do the same thing on the back. The lettering on some signs, if it's really aggressive or if there's a lot on here, I'm gonna go tap that down inside there so we can get stain inside those little lines on that. If you have a really aggressive carving, sometimes it'll definitely tear up this foam brush. I just want you to know that. I mean, so thankfully the foam brushes are cheap enough, you know, that you can buy them. I buy them in bulk, as always, because I get it at a better price. And you'll use probably one or two if you have a real aggressive carving. Okay, and you're trying to stain it. You can stain multiple things. You can do paint and such, but this is my typical type sign. So, as you can see, pretty even. We got a little excess going on right there. We're going to take care of that next. Okay, so let's take this over to the original station, and then we'll get rid of that. Okay, so we have the sign here, and as you can see, it has a little bit of excess on it. So I'm going to take my shop towel here, and basically I'm going to do a wipe over top of it, taking off any excess that's on the surface. And you know, this isn't complicated. I see I see a lot of folks who you know, in some videos that just make this uber complicated. It's really not complicated. The stain is pretty, my words, actually it's pretty forgiving. As long as you don't, you know, like go crazy and putting a, you know, a boatload on, you know, you just want to make sure you have it all nice and even. Okay, and then I'm going to go around each one of the corners. So I'm going to set it on the corner down here because I don't want to set it flat. And then I'm going to go around each one of the corners on that coved edge, as well as a flat edge or a cupped edge, depending on the edge, or a real aggressive scallop, depending on what the customer wants. And then I'm going to take that out. Okay, so as you can see all the grains and the lines that come out, and how the knot here, although intimidating when you first looked at it on a plain board, really isn't that intimidating. Okay, it actually adds a lot of character to it. Right here, and a little bit of dark spots and such. Okay, and then we'll go to the back, and you can see how it kind of darkened up here just a little bit, and it has a nice grain effect. Okay, so this is what I meant by natural. Okay, I go with a natural look, and I like the natural look because it's complementary. You know, it's complementary. It's the fact it's a wood sign, and I like that natural effect coming out, depending upon the species of the wood. Okay, so I'm going to eyeball this. I'm going to make sure that everything looks good on it. Make sure that, you know, there's nothing funky, going on with it. And then following that, oh, hey, I'll let you know where I got these shop towels, by the way. They're your generic shop towel. It comes into a, you know, a pull here, and I'll put these down in the description as well. These come 200 in a box, and I set it down here, and I pull them out as I need them. They're not uber expensive either, so but you could use them for everything. Not just woodworking, but the rest of the stuff, you know, in your garage or shop or such. So really good stuff. All right, so you see there's a little bit of excess. If you can see that or not. A little bit of excess right there. So what I'm going to do, I mean, this is the only way I know how to do it, because I can't sit here and go into each letter, you know, and try and figure out, you know, where the excess stain may or may not be, depending upon how thick I put it on. You don't want to put it on real thick. You just want to put it on, you know, on a nice even level. Make sure it's even across the board, and go with the grain, of course. Okay, so really what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my air compressor and basically I'm going to use that just to blow out the excess out of the lettering. And there you go. Now all the lettering doesn't have any excess stain inside of it, or up here. So these two letters and up there is what had it. And it's basically ready to seal from there. Okay, so hopefully I answered questions on the staining. It's not a really big process, and answered your questions on the sanding. Those two steps following the paint. And if you have any questions on the other, like I said, you want to go back to part 1. Okay, and like I said, I'll put part 1 down in the description. Okay, so we need to do basically nothing from this point. I'm going to grab my handy dandy board with the screws on it, the screw boards I call them, and then I'm going to set it on top of that, and then we'll get to sparring. So, what do I use for sparring? Well, in sparring, I use the critter. Okay, and these two together. Now, I have a video on sealing that I explain the critter a lot more in depth. So I'm going to make sure this is cleared out, take a peek at it, and make sure it's all good to go, because I do clear it out after every job, because the spar, or the Helms and spar urethane, has a tendency, depending upon the temperature out here in the workshop, it'll clump up, and cause a lot of problems on the flow of the critter. So let me get my safety equipment on, and then I'll show you over here, and we'll set it up, and then we'll get this thing sealed up. Okay? Okay, so before we go over there, I kind of wanted to give you an eyeball. On the video where I did the 5 items I can't do without in a wood shop, And that camera's crooked. Wow, okay. Hi. Okay, so in the video I did the 5 items that I can't do without. This is a screw board. Okay, so if you want to check that video out, it includes several items here that I have, some homemade, some bought, which will really benefit and save you lots of time. So this is just a piece of wood that is cut down to size. It's an old sign, it's an old 3D sign actually, that I cut up, and then I just put in 4 screws at each one of the corners. And what this does is it allows the board to set on top, and then I can flip it over, and I only have these 4 marks here when I get ready to go ship that I could sand off, and it's pretty transparent. I doubt the client even knows that I use that, but, well, they do now. But anyway, so I'm going to put this on right here. I'm going to take this board, and I always do the back first because I don't want marks on the front. And then I'm going to set it on just like that, as you can see. Now I have this space right here that, you know, allows me to seal this back, flip it over, and then do the front. And I have minimal touch points. Okay, so I'm going to set this over here in the sealer area. And then I'm going to get my critter together and get my eyeglass on, my mask for solvents, and the critter together. Okay, funny story while I'm thinking about it. If you ever hang your mask, because I have several masks. I have that mask, I have this mask. You know, I have several masks around here. If you hang your mask or you leave your masks out in your workshop, make sure you check for spiders. You know, inside or up here in the where you exhale. Okay. And I'm not going to go too far into that story, but needlessly to say, I was freaked out one time. So you want to check for spiders. That's not part of making wood sign, but part of the experience, right? All right, so I'm going to get my equipment on, and then I'm going to show you how we seal these signs up. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, I'm going to make sure that that's centered, you know, in between the length of that board. So when I put the critter on it and as I'm spraying, it doesn't cause it to teeter. Okay. Okay, so now we've finished the sealer, and I brought the board over here, and I wanted to give you a peek at it so you can see what the final product looks like. Okay, so let me grab the camera here, and I'll show what it looks like. And as you can see, you know, a lot of that reddish color, you know, has really really put in, and you know, the knot that I was talking about earlier, and how it really did not affect the lettering on the product. And then you can see here, you know, where we have the coved edge, and you can see how it's sitting down here on the bottom, but it has minimal points on the back of it, which we could use a sanding block, you know, after the fact. Let me get you back over there. It has minimal points on the board itself, so when you're allowing it to dry, it doesn't really impact the finish. Okay, so my advice to you is not to leave this in a warm temperature to dry. You want to put it into a consistent temperature of somewhere in the 65 to 72 range. And let it sit for at least minimum 24 hours. 48 to 72 is better if you can do that. And then after that, she's done. Okay, so I'm gonna push this back here just a hair so I don't pop it. So I have a tendency to want to put my hands down. Okay, so this is wrapping up part 2. I hope it was helpful for you and it showed you the last few steps in this part. In the first part, we went over the wood selection, sanding, sealer, the carving, the painting, and then in this one here, we finished up the sign with the sanding, staining, and sealing it. So that's the total process of putting the wood sign together, utilizing the CNC and the other products that I've mentioned along the way. And you can see how the end result comes out. It actually turned out really nice. I'm really tickled with that. I'm sure the client will like that. So this is Henry with Woodworking by LPI. Check out our homepage and the other videos that we have on tips and information on woodworking. And I will see you in the next video.